think we, as a company, as a practice, maybe strike some people as a little off the beaten path. Hi, Dr. Madan Kandula, founder and CEO at Advent. This is our story. Where I come from is as close to nothing as it could possibly be. As far back as I can go, as far back as I really know is to my grandparents. And then, you know, I think about this reality that you know, I've got 4 grandparents. All 4 of my grandparents were illiterate, so that's something. So my dad was born the poorest of the poor. I mean, literally, I don't think you could get any more poor than he was in the world. He was born in 1937 in India, and so into nothing. His dad died, got murdered when my dad was 5, and so you know, you already start with nothing, and then you take your father away at a young age, and then, you know, what kind of odds do you have? His mother, my dad's mom, was, I don't know a polite way to say this, but his mother was insane. She was crazy. For my dad, you know, strike 1, strike 2. And then you go out into the world and into that sort of a society, and I can only imagine how he was treated by the rest of society. You know, one of the things he can't do to this day very well is to look somebody in the eye. That's really hard for him. Yeah. And it's really hard for him, I'll bet, because when he was a little kid, for him to look somebody in the eye that he didn't deserve to, you know, look them in the eye with, you know, that wasn't okay. And so, you know, I think that's tough when you think about it in that construct. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that sticks with him to this day. And that story obviously sticks with me to this day, but that's just his life. So, you know, again, to kind of catch up to speed, I'd say somehow by the grace of God or some other force, my dad ended up, you know, finding his way into school, through school. He ended up doing, you know, well enough through school that he ended up somehow going to medical school.
Tell me about your mom.
My mom was raised different village.
She's a force.
She is a force. Yeah, my mom is, and they're definitely different personalities. But my mom was, you know, more of me, and so her family, you know, neither of her parents could read or write, but they did own, you know, a little bit of land, you know, in the village where she's from, but also, you know, very, very dirt poor, you know, kind of a concept. So I don't know exactly why, for some reason that I don't know, and I can't get a clear explanation for why my mom, you know, sort of the second youngest in her family, in a family of kind of farmers, it was decided for her to go to school. I mean, maybe she did well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But same thing, it's different story, but same, like, what was up with that? Yeah. But so she ended up, you know, going to school. And so in India, it's very, very typical to have an arranged marriage. And, you know, if you're a suitable girl, especially you're talking 1950s India, you get arranged to be married in your teens, usually, very early. And so she was, her parents and, you know, found a suitable boy, which is what they call it, and set up an arranged marriage in India. So she was supposed to get married, not go to any further school, and then that was her life, was to, you know, get married, raise a family. And again, I don't know all the details here, but I'd say what the things I do know is that she was set to have an arranged marriage, and then
it's hard to even say, right?
Husband, her potential husband, looked at her and said, "No, I'm not doing this." And it was basically, in my understanding, it was because she was too dark / too ugly. It's considered the same thing in India. As the darker you are, sort of the
Well, they put an emphasis on fair skin.
It's huge. Yeah. And it's not just India, it's actually throughout the world. But anyway, somehow, some way, instead of, you know, doing that thing that she was supposed to do, she ended up also, you know, going and wanting to become a doctor. So she went up to, or went into the same med school.
Medical school.
Yep, same med school. Yep. So that's how those stories, you know, come together, which is both cool, but then you got to remember that where those stories came from to
Yeah.
remember kind of how they ended up where they ended
What's
up.
cool though with your parents is they always talk about how they felt so lucky to have a love marriage when they didn't know very many people that did.
They were both unwanted. They were both kind of the lowest of the low, and so it isn't a surprise why sort of two unwanted people don't have an arranged marriage, I guess, in India. So they went through med school. My dad decided to be a surgeon. My mom decided to be an OB. And they went through med school, went through their training, were out in practice. I've got two older sisters, so say they were born in India, both of them, and so they had an established life in India. But my parents and / my dad decided to do something truly bold. And honestly, in my opinion, it's the boldest thing that I've ever been part of is the decision my parents made to move to this
There's
country.
nothing we've ever done that's even close
That
to
will
that
ever
hard or
be close to that being, that hard or that bold or that impactful. My dad came in '69, sort of scouted it out,
Yeah.
and was like, okay, this'll work. And then sort of sent for my mom and my sisters. My dad, in order to come to this country as a physician, he needed to start his training back from square one, which in surgery is brutal, especially in the '60s. I can't even imagine how brutal it is.
Imagine?
Yeah, to be a surgeon
and in a second language, I just can't.
But both to go all the way through that, get to the end, then move to another country and say, not only are we going to do all this in a different language, whatever you did over there doesn't count. So start from the bottom rung. And so he started as a surgical intern, and not in like a prized program. So this is back to kind of that sort of this overcoming obstacle / sort of a history of rejection. The reason he ended up going to the training program he went to was because nobody else wanted to go there. And there was Dayton, Ohio. My dad gets there, my mom gets there, and then my mom got there in 1970. I was born in 1971. So the connect the dots back now to Advent story is the reason that they ended up staying in this country was because my mom got pregnant with me, and now all of a sudden I'm going to be born here in this country as a United States citizen. And what does that mean now? What do we do? And so I think that kind of threw a wrench into the thought process. My parents don't know this. They didn't know this culture. They knew some English from schooling, but they didn't know much. So everything was sort of foreign territory for them, and then for us. And so as a family, because me and my sisters had to kind of teach our parents about this culture, part of what I ended up doing, as a kid was to study, because even though, and eventually I figured this out, that I'll never fit in. You just never, in that scenario, you'll never just blend into the crowd. Given my name especially, there's just no way to kind of hide. So you'll never blend in, but it doesn't mean you can't understand. And so as a kid, it was TV, books, magazines, just your open eyes, studying this culture, studying, what it meant to be an American, studying what it meant to sort of not be. And, it's this weird dance in my head because I am I'm a proud American. Even when I was a kid, I remember I thought this thought so many times, which is like, no matter whatever I do will never be cooler and never be more badass than what my parents
Really?
did.
You thought that as a kid?
I thought that as a
Really? I didn't know
sort of
that.
elementary school kid. One thing I've that's never been lacking in my life is a sense that I've been loved, which is the most important, thing that you can give to somebody. But, I'd say though, back in the '70s, being the brown kid in the brown family in the black and white world was sort of not easy. And before I went, when I was born, we lived in a couple different apartments, sort of. They were next to the hospital there in Dayton, and there wasn't necessarily the nicest area of town, but there was it wasn't brown, but there was sort of some diversity there. But before I went to kindergarten, my parents purposefully moved to another area of town that had better schools. Along with those better schools came no
Really?
diversity whatsoever. So it was like lily white. Back in that day, it was just sort of like, it's just how it was. And some of it was, I think a lot of ignorance. When we moved in, it was, soap on the windows, rocks through the windows, toilet paper, you name it. And I'm sure that was just the stuff I saw. I'm sure there was stuff that happened that I didn't see. There was never, ever, ever a moment like, oh, we've got to do something different. It was really more of a grit and perseverance and we're going to do this, and that's how it was. And so, I say that, and then on the flip side, I'd say I had a great childhood.
You did so much as a kid. I don't understand to this day how your parents did it all.
I don't either. For whatever reason, my parents got me involved in everything and anything, and I played every sport imaginable. So baseball, football, soccer, hockey, ice hockey. Every time I was on any sporting field, I was certainly the most obvious odd person out. And back in that era, when you're playing sports, there wasn't any of the PC mindset, and so you used every angle you could use on somebody. And so not quite every game I played, but I'd say almost every game I played, when I went out there, the opposing team saw me and they saw, this, and they saw something different, and they saw an angle to kind of come after, me and then us eventually, meaning the team. Eventually, I ended up being kind of a goon in hockey and kind of an enforcer.
Because that's what everybody thinks of when they see
But
Dr.
I ended up being that way because it was sort of like...
How many games were you kicked out of?
I was kicked out of every year in hockey. Every year I led the league in penalty minutes, but yet every year we won the championship. So it was different teams. But anyway, so you either take that and you do something with it, or good or for bad. But my mom at a very early age sort of instilled in me a sense of purpose and a sense of confidence that I don't deserve, but she believed, either she believed or she wanted me to believe that sort of something was expected out of me and something was destined from me. I've got two parents, obviously. They came from nothing, but they're now physicians, and they end up going through training. They're physicians in this country. They go out and start their practice. My two older sisters eventually, end up obviously graduating from high school. They both went into medicine. So, two parents who are docs, two sisters who are docs.
Oh, and who did your sisters marry, Mother?
Yes, and then they ended up getting married, and they married two physicians, lo and behold. So
doctors.
That's a lot of docs.
Yeah.
So little old me, the youngest in the family, sees all that transpiring and sort of is like, what are you gonna do? And
what other job is there?
Yeah. So little high school me then is grappling with this sort of, this, if I go into medicine, like, that's pathetic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you go in the family business because your parents do it, and like, are you like some sort of lemming? Do you not have a mind for yourself? I'm just saying.
I get
that's
it.
how,
Okay.
and that's probably my self-talk. That's pretty accurate to my self-talk.
Okay.
Like, are you that pathetic? and then my other self-talk would be like, if you don't do this thing that you think you want to do, how pathetic is that? That the only reason you don't do it is just because your
mom
family
and dad did it.
But what I ended up doing to sort of settle that score was when I went to college. I went to college with this mindset of, I think I'm going to go into medicine. I mean, it's like everybody else is doing this, so I'll probably do it too. But let me do everything other than that. And so what I ended up doing when I went to college, I decided or knew that this is 4 years of my life, that if I'm going to go into medicine, this 4 years, I need to get into anything and everything that's not medicine. My majors in college were cultural anthropology, was my first major, religion was my second major, and then biological anthropology and anatomy was my third major. So I did all that, and then actually the thing that I spent the most time in college was the radio station. Felt like that was my team, and then I ended up kind of moving up the ranks. But I was assistant music director, program director, and then general manager by my senior year, and so I ended up running that station. And that was like, honestly, in my life, that has been the most profound experience, most profoundly impactful experience on Advent.
Yes.
Is WXDU in Durham, North Carolina, is my time there was massively impactful. And I learned how to do so many things because you're sort of thrown into it. You're running you got a budget, you got 200 people that are looking to you for answers.
And if I remember right, they tried to shut the radio station down.
Yeah. Yes, they did. They tried to shut the radio station down, and I wasn't having that. And having gone and done all those things that I did, what was clear to me by the end of college is I knew, and I think I know, that I would be a kick-ass physician. So this glorious transcript I used to say, hey,
I'm ready to be a doctor,
medical
guys.
school. I want to go to med school, and the med school said, I got some interviews, and I did my little thing, but lo and behold, they didn't find it too compelling. They found it lacking. The evidence was lacking in my commitment to a career in medicine. And so, how do you think that went down in my head? And as the youngest in a family of four physicians, married with six physicians. At that point, with clarity, and this was a new title. I remember how bad that felt, but loser or reject is not real fun.
Did you eventually get in? What happened there?
Yeah, so then, I tried to figure out, what do you do when you're, the loser doesn't get into med school. Like, there was a medical school in Philadelphia that had a program for losers. They didn't title it as such.
Is that what it was called?
But that's pretty much what it was. So these were all, basically, you take all the med school rejects who around, and then you'd apply to this program. If this program lets you in, then you take classes with the first year med school class. It was a miserable year, but ended up showing that I could do the work, and ended up staying on at that at that med school to go to med school and do my thing, which is great. And then and I did. Med school was a great experience.
You made so many great friends.
Yeah, it's a great time in life. It was. I look back fondly on that. The kind of docs I wanted to be were ENTs. They were gentlemen. They were good talking to people. They were great doing surgery. They did the coolest surgeries. Like, this is what I want to do. This is awesome. So now the problem is I figured out definitively in my mind, as clear as it was for me to go into medicine, became as clear as it was to me that ENT is the specialty that I need to go into. What I ended up doing was writing a letter to every single ENT program in the country, the director of those programs, and really just sort of say, just my little story, like, this is blah, blah, blah. Med school didn't match. Hey, what do you think I should do? There are like 100 programs in the country, and
my God.
Most of them didn't reply, because why would you? Yeah. But those that did, I remember I got like 30 letters, and like almost every single one of them was like, basically, and it's the truth, is you didn't match. There's something wrong with you. They didn't say it quite like this, but I'd say conceptually it was, you didn't match. There's something wrong with you. Do something else. Good luck in your career. And it was like, oh, okay, God. And then, yes, certainly my family was like, just do something else. What's the big
You're a
deal?
doctor at this point. I think we all know at this point you got a residency. But how, I forget exactly what happened.
What ended up happening is that at the University of Oklahoma, one of the resident slots, one of the residents who had matched that program decided to leave ENT and do another specialty.
That's how there was an open one.
So there's an opening.
In that
and so,
year.
and long story short, there's a whole other story here, but I ended up sort of finding out about that, applying for that residency, and then, getting in. And so Oklahoma, here we come. Our chairman at that time was Jesus Medina. When he was around, his presence was felt, and when he wasn't around, his presence was felt. And being part of his program at Oklahoma meant you were part of that family, and that family was something special.
Yeah.
And so, coming out of that program, I felt, and it was the truth, I felt like I could do everything within the ENT world, and I felt like, no question about it. The other thing that happened in Oklahoma was us.
Was it?
Was.
Yeah.
Yes.
The part I always like to tell is you started this audiology rotation, and you had to follow me around for a month, and it took me about a day to show you all the little things that I did, but that you've never stopped following me around since.
That's true. That's true. So one thing that led to another, and then we ended up dating.
Followed me right down the aisle.
And we ended up getting married, and then that was when we were still in Oklahoma, we got married.
We did.
Yeah, we moved up here. We joined a practice. It was a private practice in Milwaukee. The doc that was, it was a solo practitioner who had started the practice and was getting towards the end of his career.
Yes.
So one of the hospitals up here ended up bringing me in to kind of groom me to take over that practice and continue to bring patients to that hospital and so forth and so on. So, but really, because that doc was winding his practice down, he didn't have any extra patients. So when we came to town, we joined that practice. We ended up sort of starting our practice underneath his umbrella. So, I mean, I remember fondly. Honestly, you were an audiologist, I'm an ENT, and we would just go out and literally open up the phone book. We would, carry that around with us and go to primary care doc's offices, go to allergist's office, go to anybody who might, sort of shake our hands and introduce ourselves. And that's how we started it. And so what ended up happening is that sort of old school mindset of just, getting out, beating the pavement, knocking on doors, started some of those docs sending some of their patients to come to see us. And, and it was an honor, and it still is an honor to this day to treat each of those patients in the manner in which, I would want to be treated, or you would want to be treated, or, any of those sorts of things. So that's sort of where that mindset came from. It's just taking each of those opportunities and not squandering them. And so by that sort of golden rule mindset, it was really pivoting and shifting what was sort of nothing into something. And what ended up happening pretty quickly under, when we were in this initial practice, is that our practice ended up sort of really blossoming. We ended up starting Advent November 1st of 2004. So with a 3-month-old at home, and it really wasn't at all it wasn't our chosen path. It was sort of the path that was defined for us.
Not even a little bit.
There was really no pathway forward in the path that we were supposed to go down. And so for us, it was really we started out a necessity. So on the good side is, those docs that had been referring to us continue to refer to us in this new entity. And so we were able to kind of not really skip too much of a beat. Problem is that the doc whose practice that we left did not at all take any liking to the fact that we decided to go out on our own. So he used every legal means possible, like lawsuits and other things, to come after us, to really try to shut us down before we even got started.
Yeah.
It was scary. Yeah. And so when we ended up leaving his practice, not only did he hunt me down everywhere that I possibly could be, in the OR and the doctor's lounge and the hospital, wherever I could be, he would find himself there, and he would let me have it in many different ways, but not just him. All the other members of the Old Boys Club attempted to make my life, just miserable. And so,
Yeah, they did.
Every hospital OR, every ICU bed, every hospital room that I would walk into was enemy territory. And so, I think as I think about it, sort of forward and reverse, I'm like, oh, this is a familiar feeling, sort of being, either the outsider or hunted. Like, yeah, I got that. Really just sort of fighting through that time frame, which is the origin of Advent, and the origin of our family as well, as a team and as a unit. But that shapes us. That sort of being forged in fire has shaped us to this day. And I think I'd say that's true for the practice, but that's true for me, and that's true for my family. You need to follow that story arc, and that starts to make some sense as to why it's hard to shake me and us off of a vision that we're moving towards.
This is so much where the stoic Maverick mentality comes in. Like, if you can't control it, you gotta let it go, and you can't be focused on it. Do what you can in the moment.
It was just one foot in front of the other. I think the other thing that was happening in that same time frame is within the ENT space, there were significant new inventions that became into being. Balloon sinuplasty was FDA approved in 2005. I was the first surgeon to perform balloon sinuplasty in 2006 in Wisconsin. In-office CT scanners, just so many things were coming into being in that era.
Practice really started to hit its stride, or really started to blossom through that.
With determination mixed into that, it's really led us to where we are today. So, doing the right thing for our patients meant not turning a blind eye to technology that might benefit them. And things that don't make any sense for hospitals are all over the list of things that Advent does, and the list of things that hospitals can't do. They won't do them.
Yeah.
Even though they're good medicine, they're the right thing to do. They follow the golden rule. They just don't fit into the financial and sort of organizations of a hospital. They just don't make sense. I mean, at the end of the day, what I started to be taught, and now I know to be definitively true, is that the care of each patient is about the patient that is in that exam room or the OR room, and everything needs to bend around that patient and their needs.
As we saw those patients come back over time and how much better they felt and how much you changed their lives, at least for me, that was where I could really buy in. That was something that they couldn't get anywhere else, hardly in the whole entire world. And that's the thing that they needed to change their lives.
Yeah, it was
just hearing their stories.
Hearing their stories and then changing those stories with simple solutions is what we do. And so that is addictive in a good way, meaning that once I begin to understand how impactful the things that we were doing were and are, then it's like, how do we connect these to more people? And so many people were coming in, even from almost the inception of our practice, which again started from nothing. People were coming from far away. They would be driving, they would be flying, they'd be coming in.
They'd fly from other countries.
Right. For to me, and it was both it's an honor to take care of anybody, but I'd say it's also sort of disappointing that such simple things aren't available closer to wherever they're coming from.
So many people see those offices where that one surgeon is the sun and everything revolves around it. And you seem to recognize early on that we could never do that if we were going to be getting to all the places we needed to go?
There are other practices in the country that offer, some balloon off or some in-office solutions like balloon sinuplasty. All those offices tend to be, like you described, sort of a solar system. The ENT, the surgeon, is the sun in that solar system, and the entire office just sort of revolves around that practice. And everything is sort of about that particular doc. That kind of that was us, really from 2004 until about 2014, I was a solo doc. I was the sun in my own solar system. And what I began to recognize and what we began to recognize is, well, that's great for all those planets that can get in there and anything that can get access. It's a wonderful, sort of place to be, but we're never going to be able to, get beyond that. And so 2014, that era was really, can you have a solar system and can you make the sun go away, because there's only one sun, but can you make that sun go away, and then can you recreate that in a dozen stars, a dozen or more, or 100, you name it. And we've really, I think we've done a good job of going in that direction, which is basically taking the mindset and techniques that I used when it was just me, that worked really well for our patients, and putting that together in a proven process that delivers results for patients, and getting our docs and our APPs into that team-based approach, and delivering care in the manner that it can potentially be delivered versus how it's done elsewhere. And that's a magical thing. Part of that is, I think it's easy to misunderstand Advent if you don't understand our origin. Some people, look at Advent, you see, I've heard your ad of, this sort of thing, and I'd say, and they might say, it's kind of unusual, huh? And I'd say, yeah, well, I'm unusual, and we're kind of unusual, and the practice is unusual because this practice is designed for you. It's designed for you as a patient, and we've really left behind the baggage that needs to be left behind in this world, and brought forward the things that make sense. Just like I said, for me as a kid, I never could really fit in, and there's reasons for that. And I'd say Advent, probably same. I think there's a reason I'm so comfortable leading this organization, because it's familiar territory.
If we looked at the list of reasons why we shouldn't be in existence, who would have ever even tried, right?
Because of some of the slings and arrows that we've sort of withstood getting us here, it makes us resilient in a way that others aren't. And so with what we do and how we do it, and both of those things are really important, it's on us to be able to do it and do it right and continue to do it right.
So I think, had I not worked with you in the clinic, I don't think I ever could have really understood, unless I heard it from the patients ourselves, how much their life was changed when somebody finally listened to some of the problems that they were having and did something about it.
For almost all of our patients, I think they're suffering with issues because of which they don't even know what their potential is supposed to be. And I'd say, in a way, with what we do and how we do it, it really is trying to unlock that potential for folks, to explain to them, to get the word out that there is something, there's more. And if somebody's been dealing with those issues their whole life, they have no idea what potential is. But I think fundamentally the system, the healthcare system, that as it currently exists, the fundamental break in that system is that it's not designed for individual people. It's not designed for individual patients. It's designed to keep the system going, and it is long ago forgotten about the patient that it's supposed to be treating. For us as a practice, it's entirely flip opposite. We basically, in my mind, don't deserve to exist. We shouldn't exist. If you think about kind of the story arc, there's so many reasons why we shouldn't be here. But the most important reason for why we are here is that we haven't forgotten about the patient. We can't forget about the patient. If we don't deliver results, if we don't do the right thing for that patient in the exam room, we don't exist. Versus the broken healthcare system, it exists and it almost benefits from not providing some of these solutions, because when you provide solutions for issues, you might not have a returning customer. And really conceptually, from my mind, is we are an organization that, while we're growing bigger, we started from nothing and we are human size. Meaning that we understand what it means to be a patient, we understand what it means to be a person, and we understand what it means to be sort of frustrated, and then having the key to unlock that. That's where we are. We're not as big as we get. We'll always be human sized. We'll never be sort of out of touch with what matters for our patients, and that's a wonderful thing. The thing that many people feel and hear maybe from me talking and us talking and just sort of hearing the stories that come through Advent is the passion that we have about what we do. And I think if you understand a little bit of that story, it should surprise no one as to why that passion exists, because it's a extraordinarily sort of fortunate and unusual constellation of events that have led us to where we are. And that means everything for where we're going.